Okay. All right. Well, now that we got the checkpoint discussion out of the way, I suppose it's time to get to what we're here to learn to do. I've provided you with a couple of resources. The slide presentation, which I'm not going to go through in explicit detail, but it is very informative, so I like to share it with you here. If you click on it, you should be able to see it in the page, but sometimes it looks broken, and you can click on this link on top to get to it. And I'm going to cover about like what I think we need to really know about our own static meshes, because I will be training, leaning you into prop and environment design. And it has some content for character stuff. And while I'm not really making you do that, I know some of you are interested in character stuff, so I left it in here for you. So you can take a look at these things. It's pretty informative. They cover a lot of stuff. We're not going to cover through the environment stuff, but we are going to cover through static mesh ingestion and pipeline information that you do need to understand about Unreal. And that we're going to cover that shortly. I've provided you with a zip of some 3D models and assets done poorly and correctly. If you want to take a look at them, you may. You can't use them for your homework. They're not needed for your homework, but they are meshes that you could play around with if you would like. So you can take a look at them and dissect them a little bit, especially if we're feeling uncomfortable about our modeling skills, right? So you could take a closer look at how some models are put together. All right. Then we just did that. Now I'm going to take a look at our next assignment. It's going to feel a lot like our last assignment in that you will create a 3D model of your own, new in Maya, or your preferred DCC app. A DCC app is a more formal word for digital content creation applications, usually meaning things like Maya, Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, name a thing. Those are DCC apps. So if you have a preferred application that you like, if you like 3D Studio Max more, like I do, or if you like Blender more, you may use it. The school, though, is promoting Maya because it's what most of employers have asked for more formally. So that's what we teach. To me, though, I will say that it's not so important what tool you're using, but rather you're showing specific technique and prowess, and a good eye for detail, and that you're not expressing an attitude of, I only work in this thing. That's frowned upon in industry. If you're uncomfortable in Maya, this is a great time to practice in it. I'm not going to be too hard on you technically about how good your models are. I will be giving you feedback on them, but that part's not going to be so much the grade. The things that I'll be grading will have a little bit more to do with your understanding of the Unreal pipeline and getting your stuff in. So you will create a new mesh. For those of you who have said like, well, what if I have a bunch of models? I will accept a model that you've started but need to finish or need to build on. So if you have a model that you've already started but you'd really like to do it better, do it again, or iterate on it, I will accept that. But what you can't submit is something that you've already submitted in a previous class to me, or something that's already been done that you've done. Now, that being said, I know some of you have a lot of 3D models that you've never submitted as homework. Those are new to me. So if you have a library, I would love to see some of your stuff. The idea, though, really is to help you practice. So as long as you're not doing totally nothing and you're keeping fresh and keeping the cobwebs off of your 3D modeling pipeline, that's kind of what I'm aiming for. It can be anything you want. So you'll need to decide what to model, select a reference image or several, which is better, and you are going to import your mesh, scale your asset to match real-world measurements. I will show you how to do that. Treat the asset as a static mesh of a whole animation, and I will discuss what that means. So you'll collapse all of your pieces if necessary. What I don't want is a bunch of tiny pieces in your one mesh. And again, I'll be more clear and explicit about what I mean by that. Name your files and assets an appropriate naming convention. This is not like a hard rule that you'd learn a specific way to name your files, But what is a hard rule is that you do need to name your files consistently. So you could design your own naming convention here. You can use the one that I will adopt, and I have a reference here that you could take a look at if you'd like to just, I'd like to just know what to say. I'll point you to what you can do for that. But you can have your own, and that's fine too. What matters though is that you understand that there's no right or wrong naming convention, just there are defined naming conventions within studios specifically, and they're usually studio specific, so you kind of have to like learn to be fluid from job to job. All right, you're gonna migrate a folder with the level, zip it, and submit it here, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So today I'm gonna actually talk about like the more correct ways to be exporting your meshes from Maya and what we need to be looking out for as we put them into Unreal. So, all right. If they're just floating heads, is that okay? Yeah, yeah. Are you thinking about like doing like a bust or a face of a character? Jose? I have a few character faces. Yeah, I'd love that. Woo, with hair. Okay. Yes. Careful there though, because doing materials for hair is its own issue. So when you say hair, do you mean like ZBrush's like fiber mesh or a fiber mesh style tool in Blender? More ZBrush. Okay. Are you sculpting the hair as a piece, like a single mesh where you sculpt in the texture, or are you using fiber mesh? First one. Oh, okay, that's fine. All right, we are going to talk about having too many polygons on a mesh as you import it into Unreal. You do not want to be importing your high poly models. So what you are likely to have to do, Jose, is you'll have to have a base, or it doesn't have to be low, but it could be a medium to low poly mesh where you project the high poly onto a normal map and you can apply that to that material. But what I don't want to see are extremely dense, high poly meshes in Unreal. That's poor practice. Sound good? Okay. All right. All right. Hey, but if you got some character stuff, I'd love to see it. But we're gonna get a game ready. Yay! I love it. Cool. Okay. Leave that there. Close that up. All right. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Looks like somebody's here. Welcome. This slide deck was originally created by Amer Yassin, and I'm going to follow a lot of what they've talked about. They're a consultant for Epic. They are kind enough to let me use their slides because that's what it's designed for. But it's really cool kind of getting it directly from Unreal and Epic, because those are typically tend to be the policies and things that are adopted by the studios that use it. Okay, so why FBX specifically when we're pulling from programs like Maya? We're going to talk about the scale units, naming conventions, combining objects, material IDs. I'll briefly cover try-count, but we are going to talk about pivot points and how all of these things become affected when putting them in our mesh or in our engine. Making some minor adjustments using a modeling tools plugin. So we are going to actually dabble in a plugin this week. And we're going to talk about textures. We're not going to make it to textures and UVs because we didn't make it in class this time. So we're gonna cover these first three major bullet points. Now, before you export, here's the description of naming conventions that I was talking about before. This link has a kind of unofficial, officially adopted naming convention that Unreal and Epic uses. Don't worry too much about the stuff at the very top, but if you scroll down to the bottom, pertinent terminology. Ooh, these are pretty cool to actually have access to this. If we keep going, we got naming conventions right here. Here's a decent example of how you can and should be naming your files when you export them. Okay, if you have a skeletal mesh, which we won't have unless you have designed a skeleton for your character, you would put SK, name of the mesh. In this case, it's Bob. For those who don't know, Bob is one of the Unreal metahuman characters pre-made. So that's why they're using this here. Um, so if you were going to make a material for a character, you'd put M underscore Bob texture maps. Now, diffuse and albedo, that's up to you what you prefer to use. A lot of people will still hold on to the underscore D. I know I do, because underscore A might sometimes be confused with animations. So I put D, but you don't have to. You could put underscore C or underscore color. You could spell the word out. You can, like I said, you can design your own naming convention. But if you don't know what that looks like and you don't really feel like putting in the time to do that, you can adhere to this one. So texture maps, which we should know what they are the 2D bitmap files that you apply to your materials. So you'll want to put a T underscore name of the thing and then underscore the type of file it is. And that's what's happening with this naming convention. Now, if you have copies, 1, 2, and 3 are good to, are not bad. They're pretty common naming conventions. The reason you might have copies of the same rock are not that you have like 3 different rocks and you didn't know what else to call it, but usually this is something that we use for LODs. 1 being the most detailed version of that rock, 3 being the least, and so on. Again, these aren't hard rules. They do kind of change from studio to studio, but you should know about that as being a thing if there's a miscommunication later. On material, under M underscore rock. And then you'll notice here that we've got material instance, MI underscore rock snow. Material instances, we are going to talk about that. So if you will have a material and a material instance in your next assignment, I will want to see a difference in the naming convention that you have for it. Again, we'll talk about that in a second, but this is not a bad reference to it. You can find it right here on the 5th slide of the talk right here. They'll get you to it. You want to make sure your scene is well organized and combine attached meshes when you can. Absolutely pay attention to objects that have been scaled specifically in a non-uniform way. Reset the scales if you can and keep the scene as close to the origin of world 000 as possible. A lot of this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to show you what happens when we don't, and I'm going to show you ways to keep it clean and keep it nice in your Maya projects. So scales and units, this has a reference for max, but it's more specifically we're going to be talking about, and let me see, let's look at presenter view for a second so I can just like you could see it a little bit better. This preferences settings is going to be what we're going to futz with in Maya. So I like the little visual here. We could, hey now, I wasn't done. We're going to talk about like the conversion of what the units are in Maya and what they are in Unreal. It's listed here. Most of you are not going to want to look at the slide though. My face is in the way, so I could hide my mug if we need to. Like, see, I'm it's fine. But you know what? Like, let's just get started. Let's start doing it before, because we don't really. I don't have to give you a presentation on this whole thing. Like, we don't have to do that. We're gonna actually do it properly. Okay. Now this is a Maya. This is basically a Maya project scene. It's got nothing in it. Like I mentioned before, I had a series of meshes that are on Canvas, which you can go ahead and download if you want to try to follow along with me. You don't have to. This is being recorded. I just double checked. It is still recording fine. We're good to go. So if you'd like, you can wait for when you have a mesh. You could try to follow along with a mesh you currently have, or you could use the meshes that I provided with you, or you could just sit back and watch and keep playing WoW if that's what you're doing. Just don't out yourself and let me know that's what you're doing, and that's okay. You could do that too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this into a work like layout that I prefer. I like the 2x2 layout. I don't like the 4x4 mainly because I usually toggle between an orthographic view that I like choose and a perspective view for obvious reasons, but you do you. If you see me toggling between them, all I'm doing is hitting spacebar when I select the screen. So just in case, I think I had some questions about that. It might have been another class, but anyway. All right. So first thing we have to know about Epic or Unreal, same thing. A single unit in Unreal is 1 centimeter. That's how they convert their units. It is a centimeter in real world. So that's what they build everything else around. That is a pretty relative point, though, because if you were to pull in all of your stuff and you treated a unit as an inch, you wouldn't be wrong if it was all relevant to itself. But here's where it gets interesting. Things like physics and gravity are calculated to be at mass of 1 centimeter in things. So when you scale up or down to be relevant to your own world, those things might start to feel funny. That's true in Unity also. Now, what you may remember, a single unit in Unity is a meter. So already the differences between the engines can kind of hurt you if you make something in Maya with the understanding that a single unit in Unity is a meter. That would mean that, like, well, shoot, a character is like 2 of these little squares kind of. But in Maya or in Unreal, it would be humongous compared to here. So, right. And that means that this little grid here is approximately the size of a dinner plate as Unreal is concerned. So first off, I'm actually going to put a thing here so that I could just reset the center. It was really bothering me that the rotation was like not centered. It's still not centered. Why are you doing this to me? Why? Ah, I hate it. Okay, now it's listening. Ooh, Maya. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. It's very small. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to change the grid. Actually, it might already be changed, but I'm going to show you. Because from the looks of that was a very small cube. To change the grid to match Unreal is going to be the easiest way to do it. It's not going to just convert how you have things unless you know what the conversion is supposed to be. So let's pretend that you just started modeling and you treated these units to be inches. You would have to manually calculate and multiply that object to be 2.54 of its original size, because that's the conversion rate between centimeters and inches. So you needed to convert it to centimeters, you calculate it to that number. Now, if you're already like, math, I'm not doing no math, then this is going to be the easiest thing for you, is to set the grid to match. So you don't have to do any weird calculations. To do that, let's go to Windows. Settings, preferences. No, I made a note of it. Grid is under display. I knew that. Okay, so go to display, over to grid. Now, if you just click it, it's going to toggle it on and off. We don't want that. We want to make some changes. So we're going to click this little box, which represents a dialog box, which is going to be this guy. I already made some changes. What you will probably see is something like this. I'm going to apply it. This is probably what you see. Subdivisions 5. Apply. This is what you see by default. So when you make a cube, it's going to be about that big. That's what you're used to seeing. Oof. Cap locks on? Why is my freaking pivot all wonk? It's making me crazy. That's okay. I might close it and open it again or something. So this is probably what you're going to see when you open up the grid options. So all I'm doing is telling the grid how wide I want it to be and how often I want to see a grid line. Now, this is just units. Units mean whatever you want them to mean. But we're trying to make it one with Unreal because we want to make it easier on ourselves. So you might want to adopt a metric friendly grid. So for me, having it to 100 units wide is a little bit more normal to, like, I think a good size of how I would start to model objects that are more akin to like human size. Things like boats, chairs, couches, stuff like that, instead of dinner plate, cup, which would be the size of the whole grid. I like to do grid lines every 10. But you could adjust this to be anything you want. So let's say you have grid lines every 1 unit. I don't want any subdivisions. Just make that one. Apply and close. That's really dense. It's really dense. But you will notice that, like, a cube is approximately one unit. That's good. I don't want grid lines every 1, though. That's just a little much for me. So I'm going to go back to display here. pop this over. I'm going to make it 10. No, I'm not, because I don't know how to type. There we go. 10, 10, 10. We'll apply and close. And now this is just a friendlier looking grid as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to also delete my thing. Okay. I don't know why my pivot is all askew. I will try to. That's better. Okay. Anyway. All right. So now that we've got each of one of these equals 1 in Unreal, by default, Maya is set to export at 1 unit, meaning a centimeter. So you really don't have to change that part at all. But there are ways that you could possibly overwrite it. And I'll show you here. If you go to Windows, this was the thing I was thinking. Windows, Settings, Preferences. We can go down to Settings here, and you can make these match. Oh, it was set to inches. No, we want centimeters. Oh, thank you. We do want that to match. Working units to be centimeters. Save. Now, that's interesting. I thought centimeters was by default, but I could be misremembering. Okay, so now we've got units equal a centimeter. We've got a grid that matches Unreal. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. I'm going to pull in a mesh. Let's do, this one's made in inches, but that's already converted. I'll go ahead and just bring in a centimeters measurement one. I got the boat here. It's a nice boat. And if you look up here at the body, we've got, it's scaled to here. I actually don't want this to be calculated to be the right size. This looks like this was made in inches and then scaled up to be 2.54. So if this is the correct size, right, 10-ish dinner plates equals 1 couch. Yeah, great. That's absolutely true. 10-ish dinner plates equals approximately 1 couch. I love it. So let's say that this is what we've worked with. And when you start modeling, we get a little dirty with it, don't we? You're like, I like it to be about this size, and that feels right to me. Whatever. I'm not going to be crazy hard on you about the accuracy of your model being real boats are this length standard. Now, I do bring up kind of an interesting point, because as you become more skilled at 3D modeling, you will want to start creating the assets to make from real world perspective and understanding how objects are made. That's one of the joys of 3D modeling, is that we get to think about how, for example, if you're making a barrel right now in my 216 class, you're thinking about how planks wrap around to create a whiskey barrel, and then you have a metal band wrapping around that. It's not just, does this look like a barrel? It's, I guess the band around the wood would probably potentially warp the wood, and you could start to shape and consider some of these things. So, no, I'm not going to make you go find schematics. Those are great places to start. They're a really great way to start and inform where and how you will start to create some of your assets. Anywho, all the time do we go in here and we start to futz with this, and you're like, okay, that's the correct size. We did it. And your numbers over here will be all bananas, right? Because we did it from the highest most selection, object mode selection. We did it under our face. What we're really doing is we're changing the size of this object, but in object mode, it doesn't change anything at all. So fun to know. But let's say that you didn't know that when you were modeling, and you made a cube and you got it out there and you got it to the size of the couch you wanted, but you've got all these weird new calculations and scale here. We need to reset that. We need to tell everybody that whatever shape and size that my mesh is currently at, that is the correct shape, meaning 1, 1, 1. Scale to 1 on each axis. That's correct. How to do that? What we're going to do is we're going to select all of our objects in here, and we got 2 objects. This is fine. We're going to go to, it's it. Edit. I never remember this. Edit. Delete by type. Delete history. Oh, wait, no, just kidding. Sorry. Freeze transformations. Go to modify, freeze transformations. And what this is going to do, watch the numbers on the right above my head. Reset them all. If I had moved this object to over here, it would reset this to 0. It would reset every transform value 0, 0, 0 on translate and rotation, and 1, 1, 1 on scale. Default, world default. That's what we want. So you want to make sure that you're doing that to your meshes before you export them. Okay. If we were to pull this in, let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to export my selection. I'm going to pull up my export settings. Honor, really quick. When you select export selection, do you get the export selection box, dialog box again? Because it was super bananas when you tried that in class and the dialog box didn't show up. I was like, what? You should see this. Just check for me sometime today and let me know. I'm just curious. How do I show this? Oh, do you want to screen share with me? You can do that. I have to set it so that you can. Oh yeah, you can. You can screen share if you'd like. So everybody, Honor was showing me her export. She was doing an export, and she didn't have any of these settings when she selected export selection. It was really weird. And you should be able to choose the type of export. Can't do it while another person is screen sharing. Is somebody else screen sharing? Oh, I'm sharing sound though. Okay, so try that now. So I'm not screen sharing, but I was sharing my audio. Okay. All right. Wow. You're clicking the dialog box. Okay, do me a favor and drop a cube in there really quick and then do export selection. Oh, I hate putting people on the spot. Go to polymodeling shelf. You're almost there. There you go. Click a cube really quick. Select it. Yeah, it's selected. And then go to file, export selection. No, not the dialog box. Oh. Just click just click it. Yeah, that. Yeah, okay, so you do get it. You do get it. I was worried and curious about that. So now from here, you have the options. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had it. Select FBX. We do things. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. That was it. I just wanted to see if you got the box. Okay, you can stop screen sharing now, Honor. Thank you, thank you. That was really cool of you to do for me. Low key, I was a little worried about her. You can stop screen sharing now. There might be like at the very top of your screen that you're sharing a stop sharing red button. There you go. Nice. Okay, thank you. All right, so when you have the export selection dialog box up, and that was actually really cool that you showed us because there's a couple of ways that you could do this and we might not see the same thing. So I'm glad that we saw this. We can set here a few things to make sure that we are also one-to-one with Unreal. These geometry selections I actually want to chat about for a minute because this might affect how you want your mesh to look when you pop it out. Smoothing groups on will smooth out your mesh and could have backup additional mesh data, and maybe you do or don't want that. If you don't want your mesh to be smoother, you could just turn it off. Yeah, smooth mesh. Sorry, that's what I meant to say, smooth mesh. Smoothing groups is different. Convert to null object. We can leave pretty much all of these the same. Turn this on and off as you need it though. Smooth mesh. Do you want to smooth it or not? Smoothing it typically applies a subdivision style filter to it. You may not want that unless you're trying to do something really sexy and smooth. So I'm going to turn that off because I don't need it. We'll kind of come down here. Embed media, I think, is on by default. Don't have to worry about that. What that is that any materials or textures that you have in Maya will export with it. That's great. If you don't want that, you can flip it off, but we'll leave that there. Advanced options, though. We do want to take a little look at this. Two things. By default, I believe Y is up in Maya. In Unreal, it's Z is up. I forgot to cover that in class, so I'm not going to hold the rotation against you. But this will help it be one-to-one so that when you bring in your mesh and it looks like it's sitting upright, it doesn't have a 90-degree rotation applied to it anywhere. As it will, I think, on the on the Z axis because it has to flip it. So you'll want to set that to Z. The file export format. You shouldn't have to change this. If you don't touch this at all, you're fine. However, I was told kind of recently by somebody at Epic, like yesterday, that they think that the FBX 2013 version of the binary file types from Autodesk is more stable. I haven't had issues with it, but I thought if you don't touch this and you're getting weirdness with your export, consider giving the 2013 a try. It might solve something. It's just an additional like consideration to test out. Brandon, do you have your hand up or are you just clapping?
I was just clapping.
Okay, cool. All right. I like it. I like it. So you really don't have to do anything else, really, but there was a few things I wanted to show you. Z up. Let's see. And whether or not you want to turn on smoothing on your mesh, but you will want to name it. So I'm going to export it as an FBX export. I did say that I was going to cover file types and why we do these. Now, I'm going to actually, I want emphasis. So look at me, kids. File types in 3D are not too unlike file types in 2D. There's a different kind of progression. Different files do different things. I know that most of you have had some experience in stuff like Photoshop and Illustrator, right? Pretty comfortable with knowing that. And we've shared enough photos with each other to know that there is kind of a difference between a JPEG and a PNG, right? Okay. For those that might be a little unsure what those differences are, JPEGs are very compressed. They will save a lot of space by basically resizing pixels to take care of any flat color. And it's a way for it to like save on pixel data. PNGs will remain the same in resolution completely, but they really don't have a lot of additional information beyond being able to share transparency. And they are a flat bitmap. So that's great. We have some other types though. Targas, which we'll use because they're stable and they allow access to alpha maps for us in the future. Don't have to worry about what that means right now, just that it exists. But could you consider for a moment understanding what a PNG is and what the difference between a PNG file is and a Photoshop file or a PSD, right? PSDs will be huge, right? They've got a lot of additional data. And if you uploaded that to just a regular 2D viewer, does it function any different than a PNG? Not really, unless that 2D viewer is Photoshop itself. Because the Photoshop document is saving layers, possible settings, you've got like all kinds of stuff happening. Masks, channels, because you're a boss in it or whatever. But like therefore loading up a Photoshop document to a website, huge for no reason. And so it is in 3D too. You don't want to use Photoshop documents to apply to your materials either for the same reason. PNGs are fine. Those are pretty standard. Targas are fine. They just do a little bit more, but not the PSD, not an Illustrator file for obvious reasons, right? Okay. So it is with 3D. So I'm going to try to draw a few parallels for you in a minute. OBJs are like, those are kind of like the JPEGs of 3D. They will give you very basic information and try to compress a lot. You might lose some information on your OBJ like export settings. Like you might lose UV unwraps, maybe not. You might lose vertex shading stuff. You won't need to know what that is, but it's basic. It's just basic. They're like, you use OBJ if you are just only care about the geometry and like nothing else. Not a bad place to start if you want to bring that kind of thing into ZBrush or something. Like you could have some fun with it, but it's not going to save some pretty important information. You would not export Maya files or Max files or Blender specific files as the 3D mesh into the engine either, for the same reason you don't do Photoshop documents. Those files have a lot of data which are specific to the application that Unreal's not going to do much with. Some engines do try, to take what you have and then run a compression through it and try to get it to functional for you, because this is kind of an issue that some artists just like refuse to adapt to. They don't like that, but it's not a great solution. It actually kind of creates some problems later on with optimization. So that leaves us with the FBX option. We want to export with FBX because it's stable. It holds on to UV information without having all of these other ridiculous like transforms, applications, things that Maya needs to hold on to because you're working editing that thing. So that's why FBX. And I'm going to take only FBXs when you do your export. No Maya, no Blender files, even if it takes it. I don't want you doing that. And that's why. Okay. Great. Good job, everybody. Thanks for listening. Let's move on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Let's say I'm gonna call it. I called it boat inches bad. Now we'll call it raft. So that's what I got here. Raft export under. I am placing this in somewhere that I know it will go. You could potentially export this right into your Unreal project. It will import it that way. I like to show you guys how to do it though, so I'm gonna go to like my desktop because I'm a hot mess. Go to make a text exports folder so that we could do it. And I'm gonna put in raft. Okay. Okay, drop that. Let it. It's thinking. I've got a little hourglass. Still thinking. While it's thinking though, I'm gonna open up Unreal. Cool. Finished thinking. I'm gonna move my test exports folder so you guys can see it. There's Unreal. It's showing up. I'm gonna make a new one. Next. I'm gonna mute. I really like the third person setup, so that's what I'm gonna do. Not gonna change anything here. Okay, we'll call this static mesh examples. Cool. Let it think. Unreal's thinking now, and I don't handle awkward silence as well. So just give me a sec. All right, there we go. In our content browser, let's see if I can move this guy. I'm gonna move this guy up. It's gonna cover some stuff. Sorry about that, but I do want you to be able to see what I'm pushing in, and I've got to talk about like the content browser. And also, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my mug a little smaller. So like I'm still here, but it's not gonna take up so much space. Now, on the content browser, I like to show my sources panel. It keeps me grounded, keeps me focused on where I currently am. I mean, yeah, it's here, but I don't like this particular breadcrumb view. I'm a visual person and this helps me. So if I go to the content tab, or folder, which is the highest level of folder that we can reach in our project, this is where I like to make my folders. So I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna call these test imports. You can name it anything you want, but you will want to make a folder that's saving your stuff, right? So test imports, I'll pop in over here. And now we know, we've known that if I go to my repository, my repo, I can just kind of drag and drop what I want here. And you absolutely can. It's one of my favorite preferred ways where I just like click and drag it over. Another way to do that is you can click this add import button, import to this folder, and then it'll pull up a thing and you just import it that way. I am super fast. That I don't like to do that because that takes time. So I'm just gonna drag it over. Okay, so I'll pop that down. And now we got some FBX import options. This time, I'm not letting you off the hook to just kind of go through it, whatever, willy-nilly. Now we're going to talk a little bit about this. First thing I want to do, and I want to show you, is this reset to default button. Now, if I click it right now, it's not going to change anything because it's currently at my default. But Unreal loves to be helpful. So whatever I've done for previous imports, it saves it. That's nice. So unless you are doing like a type of import of something very specific where you need these settings to be set for that, then you want to get into a habit of resetting to default. Just clicky click. That's why I'm doing it now. um, Here we've got a setting that says generate missing collision. That's fine. We're not going to touch that for now. We'll talk about that next week. These settings here is where you could hard reset any transform here. So like, for example, let's say that you modeled that in inches. You treated the units as inches in Maya. You could just add a 2.54 multiplier on that and it'll fix it for you and it'll reset those to 1 for you here. You can do that. So if you make everything too small, you could just set this to be appropriately like how much of a multiplier you want and it'll fix it. We don't have to do that though because it's correct. We've set it all up to be correct. You can switch an axis. We're not going to do that though. Materials, we're going to leave the same. In a little bit, we're going to mess with some of these settings, but for now, those were the highlight bullet points I wanted you to notice because we're going to fuck with them in a little bit. For now, we can go ahead, hit OK. So I'm going to import. It's going to think right here. Yay! What this is telling us is that, hey, you know, your mesh has some potential problems. These yellow icons, fine. That's more like caution, wet floor, could hurt you. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. Doesn't mean it will hurt us. Now, the smoothing group information was found in no smoothing group information was found in this FBX. That's okay. You can assign groups that you want to smooth in other DCCs or even in Maya. You can kind of play with the normals if you want to. And it's saying it didn't have any. Don't worry about it. That's okay. It's not supposed to. Has degenerate tangent bases. What that's usually meaning is that it doesn't like maybe some of the aggression on the angles of your models. I can talk about better ways to model for real-time rendering in the future. I'm not too worried about these problems though. They are saying that hypothetically there might be some visual bugs. It could have something to do with these things. I can tell you now though that they're fine. These meshes are okay. But they're just saying, hey, like maybe, I don't know, be better at modeling. So like it's not listening. I don't like how this makes me feel. So I'm gonna let it go. Okay. And we're gonna close it. And that's fine. We're good. And you'll notice here though that it brought in a couple of texture maps that were associated with it. It created some materials for us, like pop, done, right? Kind of. So what we have now, let's go ahead and drag in our mesh. That's pretty good. It has a default material applied to it. I don't hate that. Looks pretty good. Looks to scale. Feeling good. And you'll notice that we've got rotation at 0, scale to 1. That's how we make sure that our meshes are to scale purposefully. Instead of my terrible, like I brought in my tiny little barrel and I brought it in and I rescaled it, right? Well, why can't we just like rescale this to fit? Like if it was hypothetically too small, what's wrong with just rescaling it here? Anybody want to know? Anybody want to, or I know you want to know, but anybody already know? Okay. That's okay if no one wants to try. But can you imagine if we're reusing this asset like a rock or a cliff or a chair and you have to drag it in and then rescale every single one of them? Like you just made something that should just take a second to a second plus 3 seconds plus 5 seconds. You've just quadrupled the amount of time it should take to add that asset. And trust me, there's already going to be plenty of time or plenty of work for you to have to come in here and tweak and carefully place and adjust. That's one reason. You're scaling up how much work it takes to apply that asset. Second, every time we apply or change the values in here, here I'm gonna move my mug for a second. Every time we apply a change here is a calculation that it has to do. The more uniform that calculation is, the easier it is on the renderer for it to apply it all over the place. And like, granted, this scene doesn't have much in it, but you've seen how beefy these scenes can get. So suddenly we're making many calculations on hundreds of thousands of assets, rendering millions of polygons, and we're telling it to have a unique value for each one. And that, while your computer might manage that okay, it's definitely starting to get into a little poor optimization territory. So that's one other reason that we don't want to do that. Okay, so now we know the importance of why it has to be scaled to 1 and rotation at 0. The location of it, I won't ding you for. I won't ding you for. I will talk about pivots though. The pivot will matter. So however you place it in your scene is fine with me. But what I am looking for though is that rotation and scale will be set to 0 and 1. All right, good. All right, so take a look at our assets that we brought in that were generated. These assets have a color code. Texture maps are always red, materials are always blue, and meshes are always this like cyan. I'm sorry, green, and then meshes are always cyan. So that's kind of a cool little color coding thing that Unreal does for us. Doesn't mean anything other than what type of asset they are. And to look at it quickly, that kind of helps us out. But did you notice that there's this little asterisk next to these objects? Okay. Some assets in here don't have that, while others do. And an asterisk means that you have a dirty file. Dirty file means it's not been saved. Changes have been made to it, but the project doesn't really know that. So if I were to go to Show in Explorer, this folder is empty. Huh? But they're right there. That's what that means. They dirty. They're not showing up because they haven't been backed up. Now they're in the engine, they're cached somewhere, but they're not saved and backed up to the project. So if you click Save All, basically takes care of it for the whole project. Everything that you've made a change to will save the whole thing. You could also, I think, select them and save as you go. Just Control S if you'd like. I'm going to hit Save All. So here we go. Hey, this is all the stuff that you got your grubby, dirty hands on. Is that what you want? Yeah, it is. Please save them all by default. We'll just do that. And voila, those asterisks go away. And in my, wrong one. I've got too many windows up. Refresh. There they are. There's my assets. Saved in my repo under test imports. Yay!
Is there a reason why Unreal does that? Like we get the asterisk, is there a benefit to it?
Yes, because just because you put it in here doesn't mean it's ready. You might have, you're going to have some adjustments that you'll make, applying materials to it, possible physics you apply to it, and it is not going to automatically save all of it for you because it's kind of a method of version controlling. Like, can you imagine how very frustrating that would be if you like made some changes in Photoshop and you're like, oh, fuck, I fucked it. I don't want to do that. And you can't undo it. Well, you can't go to an earlier save, can you? Because it would have automatically saved it. So most programs don't auto save for you unless you tell it to. And I don't think there is a way to do it without going in and kind of manhandling it, maybe making a script for it. I could look into that, but I would never want it personally. I don't want it to automatically save my stuff for me. I want to tell it when I'm ready to save it. But that's a matter of preference, really. You know? Anywho, I'm gonna nuke all this because we did it right. We did a good job. I'm gonna nuke all that. I'm gonna hit delete. Whoa, are you sure some of the assets be deleted or still in red? Yeah, force it. I don't care. Blah. Blowing that up. All right. Now, next thing I want to talk about is having too many pieces of your mesh. And this is another method of dirty meshes. So I'm going to delete this. Now, I do have 2 meshes here on one. I'm okay with multiple meshes for an asset. That's fine. And I had mentioned before that there is a reason, oops daisy, I didn't mean to do that. Thank you. There's a reason that these are separate files. If I were to go to here and I'm going to, what is it? I forgot the hotkey for adjusting a pivot, so I'm gonna just do it hardcore for a second. Now, where maybe I have this here and what I want to do is animate the engine as a whole piece, and that's why I have that separate. I'm not applying bones to it, but I could apply movement to it in the engine, and that's fine. Um, so that's part of the reason why I'd accept in this case two woohoo, two assets instead of one. If you were like, well, I wanted to think about a way to, animate the engine moving. That's good. That's one whole animation for the mesh. So what we don't want here, what we wouldn't need are bones. We wouldn't need bones, and we wouldn't need to paint weights to it, kind of like you would a character or a bipedal or a creature or something. Have I lost anybody on that? It was a pretty rough explanation. I'm a little worried. Okay. Basically, you can think about it as if you can apply a transform to it and it moves the way you want it to, you can basically animate it to do that in Unreal. Or pretty much any game engine, really. So why then do we have to worry about multiple pieces? Well, you see how these objects in here at this level, there's lots of pieces to it. That's true. But they're all in one mesh, and therefore, at the object mode selection level, as I move all of it, they all come with me. If I go down to face selection and I double click any one of these, give me that. That's okay. Like, that's for editing. I'm okay there. But I can't manually animate that in an engine because that's a sub selection level. It's not an additional mesh. It's a separate piece. The geometry is not melded or welded or merged in any way. It is just a piece that you can edit, and it be one piece on the export of the FBX. Now that's so that if I animate this at all, it'll be going. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to delete that though. And I'm going to import a version of this mesh that has a problem with that. It's pieces bad, I think. Yeah, this one. Pieces. Bad pieces. Now let's say you're like, you went to town, son. You modeled a bunch of stuff. And yeah, you did. And I'm proud of you because you got all this really cool detail on your boat. You got this piece and this piece. And honestly, let's talk about this. The easiest way to model something that has multiple chunks like that is to create a new primitive, pop it in here. Here, let me make it bigger. Maybe I've got I don't know. I'm futzing around just to kind of make my point. I want this to be I want this to be like a stool or something. I've got this piece. Yeah. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens when we do that enough and you're like, I want an additional thing, so I select that. I'm going to make a duplicate of it. I'm going to move it over here. So we've got another. Yeah, get in there. Do it. But whenever I do that, I made another thing and another thing and another thing. And then suddenly this gets stacked with a bunch of stuff. Also, we have a habit or a tendency to come up here and apply some stuff. Let me go over to my shelf and let's say that I have done some extrusions on this. Or, woohoo, this guy. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to extrude. I'm going to just make some quick extrusions. Sure. And, sure. Because I'm awesome. I'm going to make some other changes to it. I'm going to add some loops, some edge loops here. Whatever. I got things. Well, every time I do that, if I look at my attribute editor, I've got these little inputs here that sometimes show up as transforms in my history here. Now, I want to move you down so you can see. There's nothing here, but let's see. One will show up when I do this next thing, though. I want all of this to be one mesh, even though there's a bunch of pieces. So make sure you're in the object mode. Select everything that you want. Hey, how come you're not letting me select everything I want? What? Oh, because I have a tool selected. I had this selected, and that's why it's being funky. Okay. Whoa. Do not do that, please. Thank you. All right, when we have everything selected, and we finally know that this is going to be my one piece, you can go up here to Mesh, Combine, and if you just click it, it should, hey now, should select everything. Mesh, Combine, Merge. Applying close. What's happening? Poly unite needs to be at least 2 polygons. Okay. Oh, it's making me. Oh, I guess I didn't have them selected. Well, what is happening to my thing? Weird. Are you making me select everything individually? I got an idea. I feel like I hit something funky on this guy, so I'm gonna just come back here and re-import this guy. That's making me mad. Yeah, there we go. I think I fat fingered something. Thank you. All right, so now, no, there's a setting I've got on. I've got something on. You're gonna do this? Are you gonna be weird? You're gonna be weird? Mesh, combine. There we go. That did it. Weird, guys. I haven't had that issue before. I'm sure I like have something on that I don't know what, but weird. So what I did is I selected all of the assets in the outliner just to make sure that I had it selected. Applied a combine to it. And now what it's done is that it's made it one piece. You see what I mean? See how that's all one chunk and I can't individually select it? But Maya doesn't like to commit. Maya likes to create this stack for us that we can come back here and still treat them as individuals if we want to, without like committing it. And you're like, well, what if I just export this? We're still going to have all this other stuff in it. And we don't want that. This is a pretty dirty mesh. So how do we get rid of all of those transforms? Remember how I mentioned before, when you've got these transforms and all these inputs are selected, there's a whole stack of things it saves for you? Such it is here in our outline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the shape and we're going to rename it. We're going to name it something proper. I like to double click slowly. Boat. And then I'm going to go up to edit, delete by type, delete history. Boom. Gets rid of all that for me and makes it clean. I've got nothing else. I don't have a bunch of weird transforms calculating and you working together. Now, if I don't do that, what it's doing is it's showing that this is the output and this is the mathematical expression that it's doing. So you can still go in here and make changes and it will change the output, right? Think of it as like this is like an equation and all of these things you're doing are values or variables that you change to it. And this is the answer. That's the thing on the other side of the equal sign. So we don't want the equation. We want just the answer. So that we just like, you know what? Don't worry about saving it for me. Just delete history. Thank you. Something I like to do is I actually like to save delete history because I don't know if you've noticed, I hate remembering where these tools live on the toolbar. So I'm going to go to delete by type and delete history. And I'm going to hit Control Shift click. And now it's saved it to my custom shelf. And now I'm going to just, boop, click it there. Boom. Yeah. Now, there is something this did, though. Is if you had multiple materials on an object that had lots of pieces to it, it just combined them onto one mesh. So each mesh here had its own material. And now it's one mesh. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at it. We're going to export this selection. Right here, we're going to say, combined boat. Yeah. Pop it over here. We're going to go to, there's my combined boat. Pop it in over here. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to leave it the same, but I'm going to hit reset to default because that's a good habit. Get into that habit. Import. Boom. Huh. It made 5 materials. Cool. I'm going to click and drag this puppy in here. It's just thinking, guys. The materials are there, but it's chooching, like it's doing all the math. Now, it assigned a material to each section that was its own piece. And notice this is a lot for Unreal to do. It's actually still thinking, like it's still calculating those materials for me as it renders out. That's a lot of work we're asking it to do. Granted, it's chugging a little harder because I'm streaming and talking to you and all that, and recording. But that actually just kind of goes to show that if you don't set it up properly in Maya with it being a single material applied to the whole thing, and then you do it separate and then combine it, it's going to do this thing for us. Well, that's not a right or wrong. You can have multiple materials on a single mesh. They're called material IDs, where basically you think of it as a slot of a material that could be applied to a single mesh. See above my head? Instead of applying one material to the whole thing like you might be used to thinking about it, you can apply multiple materials to the whole thing. Problem is, though, is that that's also not very optimized. And if we do want to do something like this and keep the material IDs like that, there's a better practice for it. And that is called a material instance. So let's think about that for a second. I might actually do like a little illustration demo if we have questions, but I want to talk about a material instance for a second. Um, Materials are a stack of texture files combined through, fancy math to give us a cool output of what we want the thing to look like. Totally okay. A master material works functionally just like a regular material. Only thing that's different. Is there a certain file type we have to use when importing to Unreal? Yes. FBXs, PNGs, and Targas. But I'm not sure which file of what you're asking about specifically. So if you're for 3D meshes, they need to be FBXs. For texture maps that you import, they need to be PNGs or Targas. Okay. So, okay, I was wondering if I could use OBJ. No, I mentioned that earlier. No. But if you're curious about why, you can go back in the video about why I talked about it and you can see. But good question though. I like them coming. I know that y'all can't remember every word I say. That's fine. So when we're looking at a material instance, essentially what we're doing is kind of like making what would be like a baby shader. You make a material that instead, when you normally make a material, you're like, this material will have this specific diffuse map, this specific metallic map, and this specific normal map, or whatever it takes for you to make the material the way you want it, right? Well, let's say you have a lot of materials that have the same combination of types, either color map, material, or a metal map, or whatever. So what you can do is you can make one material that has all of those slots available where you can add a texture to it, you can add a color value to it, etc. You apply that to all of the other sections on your mesh, then all you do is swap out in the material instance those specific variables, which would be a different texture file or a different value. So the master material informs the copies of all of its baby instances, right? Instances are the children of the mom master material. Now, they're still technically called master materials to material instances, but those are starting to shift just because it's kind of an unsavory word. I like to call it mommy material. But if you just think about that, the material that the instances are referencing, you set up the material to have those slots instead of just dragging specifically the file that goes to that particular object. It doesn't have to recalculate it every time. It runs the calculation once and then only swaps out for those variables. That's why it's more optimal. Okay, might be hard to envision while I'm describing it. So let's come over here to our demo here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to delete all this again. We're just going to kind of start over. Now, I'm not going to re-export it or anything. I did that part right. But first, I'm going to create a master material that import will be pointed to. So here's what we do. I'm going to go here, material, just like you'd make any material. And I'm going to call this M underscore master underscore boat. All right. Cool. When I double click a brand new material, what shows up is this fun blueprints looking thing. We've got the grid. We've got a grid. And we know that if we drag in texture files, it'll be that specific value. We don't want to do that though. We don't want those to be specific. I'm actually going to do something a little different. We're going to just worry about color for now, and then I'll show you how to do it with a texture map slot, but it's basically the same thing. instead of going through here and finding what I need by typing it in, I'm going to right click, promote to parameter. I'm going to click that. Now what this is doing is it's just creating a base color value. It's not a map, not a texture map, but it is a color value. And this is fine because this will still show what I'm trying to show. But you'll notice that it's a parameter, not a vector 4 or a vector 3. It's still a vector, but it's a parameter specifically. Parameters mean you're going to talk to other things. That's what that means. You're going to talk to other materials, and in this case, material instances. And so we want you to be adjustable when pointing to you. That's what a parameter means. We're just putting in a slot. So I'm going to do that with base and metallic and roughness for this particular example. Do I have to use these? No. I want you to use what feels right for your mesh. Because right now you guys are playing around with art and you've got your own style you're futzing with. So you can do any layout of this that you want, but you will have to make at least one master material and a material instance applied to your mesh. We'll show you how we do that. All right, so what I have here are parameters and they're defaulted. Now, the base color is defaulted to black. You could change that if you wanted to. It really doesn't matter too much because I'll show you why. I'll show you why this part doesn't matter. But the metallic and roughness, you'll notice that those are a single value, or we'll call that a floating point, a float, meaning it can be a value between 0 and 1, or any two numbers really, but think of it as a slider. So it's a floating point integer. You can move the value in decimals. So if I've got metallic selected and I look over here at details, and of course my guy has to move up here. Sorry about that. We got metallic. This top part right here, the material expression scalar parameter, is what we want to play with right now. We're going to set the default to this, but in order to change that from anything but 0, we need to tell it a minimum and a maximum. Metallic value, normally these things are set from 0 to 1, but you can do whatever you want. You can do -1 to 1. You can do 1 to 5, whatever. I'm going to leave it 0 to 1 because I like thinking about them in percentages, and 0 to 1 is 0 to 100%. So my max slider, I'm going to set to 1. Boop. And my default value for metallic, I'm just going to leave it 0. So it's thinking. This right now has no metallic value. So this is supposed to be like a plastic, shiny plastic instead of a value. And it's a little hard to see because my roughness is 0. It is not rough at all. It is a perfectly smooth, like plastic or like smooth material. And again, we want to change that. We don't want this to be set to 0. We would be able to change its roughness. So I'm going to add 1 to it. And instead of it being defaulted to 0, I'm going to give it like I don't know, like 0.5. So I'm giving roughness about in the middle so that the default looks like something I can kind of play with. Because if it looks just coming out shiny, you got to fix everything, That's okay. That's pretty good. That's a pretty standard looking material that has these parameters on it. Now, there's an asterisk there. It's dirty. We haven't saved it. So we're going to save it. We're going to let it think for a little bit. Boop ba doop. Saving packages. There we go. Yay. I'm going to dock it. I could just close it, but I'm going to dock it, and that's okay. Because I like to be able to toggle. I'm just weird. Now, let's import our guy again. Let's import our combined boat. Come here, combined boat. Reset to default, because that's a good habit. I'm going to kind of come down here. I'm going to take a look at some stuff. I'm going to leave everything the same except my materials. Let's see here. Let me make sure that I got this right. Local is good, but instead of creating new materials, which is what it did for us before, I'm going to create new instanced materials. So it changed our slot here, and it's saying, hey, you're going to create an instance of your materials instead of materials. What's the master material you want us to pull from? So I'm going to go here, and there's a bunch of shit in here, but we don't need to do that. I'm going to look up master material. Did I type in master? I did. Master. Okay, I'm going to retype it. M_ master. There it is. Took me a minute. That other stuff in front of it. There it is. Found it. And do not override means it's going to apply the material instances to be exactly as I made them in the master, but I don't want that. I actually want it to override the base color so that it brings in the base colors that it preset before. That way it just kind of starts me off strong. All right, so I'm going to click import. Yes, I know, I'm a bad modeler. Okay, moving on. Now, boom, I've got a master material and a bunch of these little materials that it made, but check this out though. They look the same. I know they look the same. I'm going to click save all so we get rid of the asterisks. Yes, please. No asterisk, no dirty. Master material is a lighter green, and of course you can't see it because I've got my thingy up here. The master material is a light green. Material instances are dark greens. That's a very subtle visual change, so I would recommend that you change the M to MI underscore these things as needed. But if I double click one of these instead, I'm going to double click silver because that's the most fun to play with. I do not have a grid. I do not have a blueprint. I have a material with stuff I can play around with. I can change the color if I want to. I can change the I can make it metallic. It's supposed to be silver, so why not? So instead of, it should be probably, yeah, make a metal. Make a metal. I can make it like brushed, or I can make it smooth. Ooh, that's pretty. I could give it a color. Want to be weird with it? Oh. Cool. I'm going to give it a slight warm or whatever, slight cool. Actually, I think silver's got a slight warmth to it, technically. Otherwise, it's steel. Whatever. I'm going to hit okay. I like that. That's silver. Okay. Now, if I click and drag my guy in here, ooh, now we're starting to see how, like, the metal looks like metal, right? Now, and all I needed to do was change those values, and I can do that per thing here, right? I don't have to make a new material for all of it. It's kind of set up. So do you see how the babies are listening to mom, but they also have their own identity too? But they're extensions of mom. All right. Cool. Okay. It's 2:05. I've been talking for a while. I've got one more thing I want to show you that has a few things to cover in some detail, but I want you guys to take a break, get some tea, use the bathroom, call your bae, whatever you need to do. Do you guys want 10 or 15-minute break? 10 minutes? 15? 15. Andre wants 15. Okay. All right. We'll come back at 2:20, and in the last 20 minutes of class, I will cover with you how to fix pivots. Okay? All right. Let's take a break. All right, everybody, we have about a minute left, but I'm starting to line up my duckies, get stuff ready for this next part. This next part is, what I'm really going to do is basically show you a couple of ways to solve the same problem. I think some of you will already know how to do this in Maya, and that's wonderful. But you know, like, still though, like this can be an issue, and I want to show you the old way and the new. Well, I guess it's not really old and new. It's just different ways to do the same thing. So now that we're back, welcome back, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and delete my boat. It's a nice boat, but we're done with that boat. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import a problem mesh, and first I'm gonna do it here in Unreal. First, that's what I'm gonna do. What do I have here? Is that that's weird. Okay. I could leave that there. That's fine. In the examples that I had given you before, I have a series of bad meshes. Actually, I'm gonna have to go find it now. Let's go to downloads, which is where I got it. That's FBX. I am going to show you the bot bad pivot. We're going to show you what a bad pivot looks like. Now, I just imported. I didn't hit yes yet, but I'm here. Notice how the material is set to the same? We don't want this anymore. We don't want it taking my master boat material as a master, right? And to create material instances. So we're going to reset to default. That's the big why, because I mean we can change these settings on occasion, but we don't want to make sure we get into the habit of reset to default because that could really throw us later. So I'm gonna go ahead and import that, and it's gonna pull in some materials and stuff. We're not too worried about how good the materials are, but we're gonna bring in our bot and we're gonna like bring him here. What's up, my dude? Cool bot. Notice how the pivot is way over here, like way over here. Uh-huh. Um, uh, there's a hotkey to move this that I'm actually drawing a blank on. I think it's like Control Shift
He
middle
cannot
mouse.
hear you.
Oh no! I'm so sorry, everybody. I dragged. I was recording me talking, but you guys couldn't hear me. I'm so sorry. So I dragged in a bot with a bad pivot. Ooh. Bad pivot, everyone. Oh no. So I'm going to show you how to fix this pivot a couple of ways. First is the Maya way. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you in Maya. And many of you probably kind of already know where this is going to go because I alluded to it a little bit earlier. First off, I got to say, there was something about... I'm gonna hide the chat. Sorry. There was something about this that this means that there is a keyframe applied. I did know that, but I couldn't see it, and it's because it's at 0. Oh dear. So I have to right click and delete that first off to be able to edit any of this, and that really threw me in class the other day. I was like, why isn't it listening to me? So there's a couple of ways that we could go about this. And one of the easiest is to just kind of set this to 0. And then what I have done in the past to do this quickly is to right click and go to face mode, select everything, just Control A, and then like move it over. Whoa. Okay, Maya just froze on me. Whoa. Okay. And then move this okay, you know what, Maya? It's just freezing. Wow. Okay, Maya is chugging. They're hurting, so I'm actually gonna close it out and reopen it and see if that helps because it was like really choppy, stalling. Yeah. Well, weird. Technology, everyone. Thank you. All right, let's do this one more time. Maya, there we go. Bad. It has a keyframe here I'm going to delete because that's going to cause me trouble later. Object mode. If I come over here, set this puppy to 0, that means the pivot is at 0. You can see that it's there. And if I like face select and move everything over, still thinking really hard. If I face select everything and move it over in that sub-object, it will keep
Miss Neho?
Yeah?
Are
I'm
you,
still muted? I'm not muted
I
anymore.
think you're muted right now.
I'm not.
I can hear her.
Shh. I'm not muted anymore. I am not. I was a minute ago. See, you can see a little icon. Okay, good. Not that things are your fault. That's not it, but I'm glad that it was solved, it looks like. Okay. Yeah, if I'm muted, there should be a little icon of a microphone that's red and a little slash through it. So that's how you should be able to tell visually. But if we move this guy over, it's struggling to actually keep up. I think that that's probably just my Maya chugging a little much. You'll notice though that if I come back to object mode, you'll see that it's a little bit more correct. There's a plus and a minus to that. It's just a little eyeball-y. And it's not very specific, right? So I'm going to undo what I did. Got my guy here. And something we can do is at this object mode, we can kind of move it to center. And I mean, best ways to do that is to use like ortho view. So I'm going to look at a top view. And we're going to going to move this guy, feels about center, and I'm going to look at a front view, and I'm going to move this guy up here. Okay, that's fine. And then I'm going to freeze the transformations. Like, that will basically set us back to a more okay place to be. And then like that way we knew we could reset everything to 0, 0, 0 and move that pivot. Oh, we also have to control if you hit D, toggling D, boop, boop, boop. There we go. And you can tell that I've got this on pivot mode because, ooh, and it's set to local. Oh, that's annoying. I can adjust this to be 0, 0, 0. Or not. I can move the pivot really super annoyingly. I have to set this to... Anyway, I'm getting crazy mad about this guy listening to me. Top down view. Can move it over. Blah, blah, blah. Perspective. We'll go to freeze transformations. There we go. Looking a little bit more normal. Can move that up. And then hit D again. And we can like export it that way. That's kind of the old manhandle way. I've like got to wrestle with it. If I export this, it will solve for in here. Now let's pretend that we don't want to do that because you saw me wrestling with it and it getting kind of weird on local axes and then having to reset that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. There's a way to do it in Unreal that's really friendly, and I will definitely be able to show you within the next 10 minutes. It's that quick. First, what we got to do though is we have to get ready to put in our very first plugin. So to do a plugin, you got to go to settings, click plugins. Now what's in here is basically all Unreal approved plugin features and tools. It's kind of their solutions to handling new features. Like they usually test it with a plugin first before it ever becomes part of the main engine. And the plugin that we're looking for is it's called 3D Modeling Tools. No. 3D Model Tools. It's no 3D. It's just Model Tools. MODEL. Modeling Tools Editor, this one. We're going to click Enable, and that turns it on. But here's what's up. You can't just turn it on and it start working. You have to basically open Unreal again. So this is saying like, hey, this is a beta version. It might be unstable. We know, but this is what Unreal is showing us now. They're currently working on it. Usually when it says beta, this is always going to be a message that pops up. It's true, it will be buggy, but they are really trying to push for this particular plugin. So I've been using it. It's been fine so far. Know that. We're going to hit OK. And then it's going to ask us like, hey, this isn't going to work until you restart it. So we're going to hit restart now. And would you like to apply the changes to the materials that you... Yes, I would. I would like to save everything. Please and thank you. So it's going to think. It's going to just reset. Do you want to save them? Yes, please. It'll power back on its own because this is functionally a restart. And it'll also do this kind of cool thing where like, hey, you had these other windows open. Do you want us to open those again so you can pick up where you left off? Most of the time, I say yes to this. I could say no now because I'm not doing any more material work, but I left it up because I kind of wanted to show you how that works. So it's still thinking. I'm at 40% initializing. Give it a second. It's still thinking. So I'm still here. It's still powering on. Eh? Unreal is still thinking. I should have done this before break. Now I'm really scared. No, it's still thinking. It's thinking. Unreal! It's actually probably also OBS. I'm sure that that's part of it too. Still initializing. I wonder if this will help. Will this help? Uh, oh my gosh. I'm starting to get really worried that this is not going to power on and I can't show you how to do it because it's a really nice feature. I've got VR running in the background. That's cool. Cool. I don't need that. Thanks for that. All right, I'm going to hard reset my crash client editor. Uh-oh. Services. It's running. Flexing. Yes. It's not running. So that's good. Oh, okay, we're at 86% now. Yay. Okay, so I just needed to be patient. That I don't have much of that. Okay, not responding. That's not good. Yay! Okay, so we had 3 editors open here. Do you want us to reopen them for you? I'm gonna hit yes so I can show you what that looks like. It's very nice and easy. It just opens up what you had before, and it'll be my material instance that we were working with. These materials here, like they've docked them on a separate thing, so you just kind of pick up right where you left off, and it's trying to help you, trying to be helpful. All right, but okay, but I don't need you to freeze on me though. Okay, so here's what we do. We've got the plugin working now. It's enabled. We restarted. So now if I go to, I believe it is settings. No, where was it? Where did I put it? Windows, editor mode. No, modes. There we go. That's right. Under modes, modeling is now here. That's not going to be present unless you enable that plugin. So I'm going to turn that on, and we're going to go into modeling modes. I've selected the object I want to play with, and now we've got some kind of tools in here we can start to futz with. You should check it out. Don't rely on it to model your stuff from start to finish, though. It's not that stable, right? But what it does do is help us with a couple of minor tweaks to our meshes without having to constantly re-import, export, re-import, and export. So when I've got this selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to Transform, and then I'm going to click Edit Pivot. Yeah. Here's my favorite part. While, yes, you can go in here and manually do it, they've got some hot center. Center to the middle of my mesh, please. Thank you. Oh, that's not what you wanted? You want it at the bottom? Hell yeah, I do. Center bottom so that when I drag this puppy in, thank you, please and thank you, it works correctly. Now I'm going to go ahead and save the changes. I think I hit apply right here. So accept at the very top. It's not very intuitive, but it is here. So if we hit accept, now check this out. Boom. It's like that with all of them in your whole project. It's not per scene focus. This will actually fix the mesh import. The mesh import problem. My cat is wiling out. I'm sorry. Okay. So that is my favorite preferred method of fixing it. If you're comfortable putting in a plugin and then fixing it in Unreal, you absolutely can. The other method still works, where you manually reset the pivot and then freeze your transformations and redo the export. That's how we had to do it in the past, but times they are a changing. So now we've got this new feature here that I wanted you to be aware of in that way. Okay, so we're about all wrapped up. So with this last like a few minutes, I'm gonna hang back and answer any questions you might have on your homework. Now, you will want to make a master material, and a material instance, and apply the instance to your mesh. Could be one, could be several if you have multiple material IDs. I won't require that you use texture map files. If you'd rather just do color imports, that's fine. I'm okay with that. You only have a week to do a model. So if that's something that you're worried about, you can get a little creative about how you can apply these material values without having to go down like a whole substance pipeline or a baking of normals unless you want to. It's really more about like you just applying good practice to your exports coming in. I got a thing. Model something. Yes, model something. Um, I have been really inspired by watching what you guys are posting and even kind of going down ArtStation myself. Friday, I plan to just model a little thing in the DMA Student Association Discord live. So if you are bored and you want to work on your homework on Friday, modeling tools editor mode. No, I'm not gonna do it there. I'm gonna do it in like Maya. But I don't know. I was thinking about modeling a cheeseburger and then applying all the colors to the different sections because that sounds like fun. And if you want to model a cheeseburger with me, you can join me and you can model it with me, or you can model whatever you want to model. But I do know that some of you are dusting the cobwebs off of your modeling practice. And since this is a mostly Unreal Editor class, I still want to give you some supplemental tips on modeling stuff. So I'm going to do that on Friday. If you want to join, you may. You don't have to. But if you're finding yourself stuck on like what to model, just come model a cheeseburger with me and that can be your homework and you're fine. That's okay.
I believe Dawson was asking what the name of that plugin
Oh,
was.
yes. It's Modeling Tools Editor. And then you just enable it. So if we go to, I'm sorry, settings, plugins, if you type in model, spell it right though, modeling tools editor mode, just enable this puppy. There's a lot of pretty fun plugins that you should futz around with and play with and stuff. But we'll go over a few. Yeah, no problem. We'll go over a few. I will share the screen that has it up so you can see it. Sorry. Right now, this one. That should do it. Okay, everybody. We've got 2 minutes to spare. I will hang back and answer any questions that you have, but I want to release you into the wild. I look forward to seeing what you guys make. I'm so excited to see your pretty arts. And have a wonderful week. Maybe I'll see you on Friday. Maybe I won't. That's okay too. Yeah. Hey all. I realized that I didn't show you how to migrate over a scene. We kind of ran out of time. We did cover this in class in person, so I think those of you that were here kind of probably remembered and didn't even notice that I didn't cover it here. So this assignment is asking you to export or migrate out the folders that have your assets, including your scene, and zip that up and give that to me. We're not doing a screenshot like we did before. So what I want to do is show you how to quickly do that. And first thing you got to do is you're going to make sure that you're saving your scene to not be the example scene. So whatever you choose to do this in, I want to see your import. You don't have to set it up gorgeous. You don't have to do a render. What I'm really looking for is your pivot, your scale, your to world scale, how many objects a mesh is, and to make sure that you've applied a master material to your material instances on the asset itself. So you wouldn't apply a master material to your object, only material instances, even if there's just one, because I want you to set it up properly and then show me that you did that. So I'll show you how to do that now. So we're going to go ahead and save. If we go to File, we're going to save the current level as. It's functionally the same thing as a save as feature, like you're making a copy of this thing. I made a folder here called test imports. I'm just going to leave it there. You can organize this any way you like. You can call it test imports. You can name it your name. You can say homework, and you can put all of your stuff in the homework folder. It's really just best to keep it all in at least one folder so that it's not talking to a bunch of stuff, even though you might honestly be talking to a bunch of stuff in the scene, especially if you're using one of these templates. It's not a big deal. Just learning to practice your own organization in these projects is good. So I'm going to change this from, instead of third person example map, I'm going to call this Neho homework. You can name it anything you want. Don't use funky characters like periods. We'll hit save. All right, now I've got what should be a level here. You see that here. It's not dirty. There's no asterisks. Everything is fine. So in the folder that it exists in, I want you to right click and hover over here to migrate. Migrate's going to select everything that this folder is referencing, including the map. The map is referencing a bunch of stuff. It's representing some referencing some primitives. It's referencing it's I think a third person controller in here, whatever, right? It's not important that you have them for your homework. It could be a totally fresh scene if you like, but I know that you guys might want to be experimenting with some character stuff, and I don't actually want to hold you back from that. So just as long as whatever you do, just make sure that you are migrating the folder that has the map in it. And then it will auto-select all the stuff that it's touching. The map is talking to the third person. It's talking to Manny. It's talking to geometry. It's talking to this particular blueprint here. That's fine. So we're going to hit OK. If you're unsure, you can open all these up. But by default, it just selects everything. So we're going to hit OK. We're going to tell it where to go. Now, it's going to want to put it in our content folder. No. I don't want you to zip up the project within the project. That's getting a little too meta. So I'm going to pop this over to whatever you feel comfortable. In my case, I'm putting it in the desktop just to kind of make a point. I'm going to select that folder. And yes, please do those things. Successfully. Migration successful. Now. Now I'm going to find it now in third person. Let me see the thing. I have to find it in my... I'm going to change the view to this so that we can make some sense of it. And I want things date modified. Yes, unsaved. This was today. Hold on now. There we go. Most recent. Yeah, it saved as... Oh, it saved all my stuff in the thing. Okay, I have to, I meant bad. I need to make a folder for this to make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the folder first, and then I'm going to call it homework zip. Zip, because this is the one I'm going to zip. Let's do that again. I'm going to right click. Migrate. Yes, all of it. It's going to tell me where do you want it to go. I accidentally put it in here, so notice how it has all of those folders out. I got to give it a folder that I am doing. Homework zip is the one. That's where it's going to live. Yes, please. And now I will have a folder that looks a little bit like a contents folder that I will be able to import into a project for me to take a look at to make sure that you've got your stuff set up correctly. So just zip that puppy up, give me that for your homework, and then you're good to go. Okay? All right. Catch you on the flip side.